Alright, fellas, sleuths, it's time to look at the penultimate episode of Nancy Drew Season 2, The Judgement of the Perilous Captive. Nancy pulls the bag off of Everett's face and the duct tape. He questions if she knows what she's doing, but she knows how he killed Celia and why. He doesn't know what she's talking about, and Gil presses they should be physical. Everett snaps that Gil will be joining his father in prison. Gil pulls Nancy aside out of worry for what Everett will do to his father if he learns about the tape. Everett still doesn't believe Nancy, so she shows him a photo she took from the crime scene and presses that she will bring him to justice. He asks where they took him for this interrogation, and Nancy says they are at Lucy Sable's house, which is fitting since he's going to confess. Bessie yells for Carson, and Nancy races downstairs to find Carson, who just heard. He's trying to call Nancy, but isn't getting an answer. He worries at Everett found out about her and how Nancy is hiding. He shows Bess the photograph of Nancy covered in marks and asks her to talk with her friends about it. Meanwhile, Nick and George wake up together and begin to make out. She's so worried that Everett knows that he found the Black Crown Tape's hiding spot. Duke opens it from Jake Kazine, who was a tenant complaining about the youth center messing with his business. George gets a call from Bess, who tells her that Nancy's in trouble and to come to the Historical Society with Nick. George decides to go while Nick focuses on himself and Jake. Elsewhere, Nancy talks about Everett's crimes, slaughtering 12 men on the Bonnie Scott, burning his accountant and making it look like a suicide, and creating a slush fund in his son's name. Everett knows the recording will hold up in court, but Nancy plans to send it to multiple law enforcement agencies to give them a running start against him. She wants to know who he paid to kill Celia and why. He had no idea that Nancy was his granddaughter until she told him in the limo and he didn't kill Celia. She knows that he's more upset over an accusation than Celia's death itself. He points out that she's upset enough for both of them and wonders if she truly knew Celia. He thinks Nancy played on Celia's weakness for Ryan, or she manipulated Celia by using the mother-shaped hole in her heart, and that she used Lucy's one-night stand and Kate's cancer death to make herself an heiress. Nancy warns him not to say their names again. Across town, Ryan stands in the morgue and kisses his mother's body on the forehead while Tamora watches from the other room. He gives Celia's effects to Ryan, and he asks where his father is. Tamora hoped he knew as he's missing. Ryan thinks Everett did this and talks about the videotape, but he doesn't know the victim of the recording yet. He tells Tamora to trust him about the existence of the tape and leaves. Gil returns and Everett warns them that someone will notice he's missing, sees the limo on the wrong side of town. He warns that Gil will betray her and he advances on Everett, but Nancy pulls him away. She won't let Everett walk out unless it's in handcuffs and leaves to find proof. Nancy takes in Hudson Enterprises. Ace tries to track Nancy while Bess, Carson, George, and Hannah investigate Nancy's markings. Hannah identifies them as a living hex or curse and sees the same marking on Bess's photos of Nancy. Hannah thinks if they go back far enough, they can figure out when the hex was placed. Ace traces Nancy and sends the coordinates to Carson, who runs off to find Nancy. Meanwhile, Nick confronts Jake about the complaint. His complaint isn't about the wall or construction, it's about the troubled kids who will be coming in and out of the building. Just because Nick is one of the good ones doesn't mean they all are, but Nick presses that he can give the students life skills they take for granted. He doesn't want to wait for them to screw up. Jake offers to go to the youth center on the clause. It isn't in Horseshoe Bay. Elsewhere, Carson tracks Nancy's phone to a UPS box where she ditched it. Nancy, meanwhile, searches for the money that Everett left, but finds that it's in Celia's name. Gil gives Everett water, and Everett apologizes for the outburst. Coyley offers to get Bertram released, but Gil believes Everett will kill him. The best thing for Bertram is for Everett to disappear. Everett offers to give them money to leave as he doesn't want Bertram dead just quite. Gil sits down and asks how much money he'll get. Across town, Abe talks to the coroner and learns that Celia's body was discovered 22 hours post-mortem. He finds red glass on the ground. Nancy comes inside to find Gil untying Everett, which infuriates her. Ryan arrives, storms into the house, and punches Everett repeatedly for killing Celia. The night Everett back up, Nancy apologizes to Ryan for Celia, but doesn't want to think about her. She asks how he found them, to which explains that Tamora told him as the limo was spotted on the website, and Everett's only connection there is Lucy. Ryan assures Nancy that he figured it out before tomorrow. He is about the plan and she tells him that she wants to gain proof. She tells him there are no recent payments from Ryan's account, but the money has to be there somewhere. There was nothing on the computer that would take Everett down. Gil asks why she's not telling them. She admits to reading their prenup and he forfeits any rights to Celia's estate if she's murdered. Ryan knows that Everett would make it look like an accident if he was responsible and wouldn't pass on a fortune. Nancy needs more time to prove it, but Gil doesn't think she can and presses that he should have let Everett go. Nancy snaps if he thought Everett would pay him, but Gil thinks her plan was stupid. Ryan tells him to back off and Nancy counters that Gil agreed to the plan, but he states he only did as she promised to protect his father. Everett objects that she won't find evidence because it doesn't exist. At the Historical Society, George asks Hannah about the lifeline shortening and if it's true. When the two souls have entwined, the average is weighted toward the spirit, so George's friend, tied to Odette, only has about a decade left. Meanwhile, Nick visits Timur, who asks for help on taillight identification. Nick manages but stops himself to say that it's a common one that's confused with cars and boats. Timur writes out that it's Nancy's taillight, and Nick texts Nancy to warn her. Nick asks Timur for help with his tenant. Meanwhile, Gil thinks they should look into other enemies of Celia. Nancy points out the ritualistic and cold, but the way it was posed was similar to Icarus. Brian knows it's Greek mythology and might have paid the price for something. Nancy remembers that Celia was freaking out over some list, but it might have been the list of names from Celia for her. Celia stole the list of names for her from the road back, which Everett recognizes. They're a powerful group with infinite means and unflagging resolve. The general public doesn't know their existence, but scarce few know they exist. They wouldn't hesitate to make a move against anyone who angered them. They would left a calling card, like a symbol, and Ryan gives Nancy a coin with a symbol on it from Celia's belongings. She recognizes it as the road back symbol. Edward points out that Nancy is responsible for Celia's death, as she's the one who asked her to get the list. The message was meant for Nancy. Nancy runs out of the house and breaks down crying. Brian joins her and comforts her as she believes Everett's claims. She wishes Celia was doing her a favor. Brian knows Nancy was doing it to save Ace's life. Well, she only did it to keep Everett out of jail. He knows she couldn't have known what the road back was capable of, but Celia did and accepted the risk. Nancy wants to get justice for Celia, but Ryan admits that she might not. She should add it to the list to focus on what she came to get justice for. He tells her not to forget whoever it is. She tied with the bright guy for the wrong murder. Meanwhile, Nick visits Jake to thank him for helping him to understand why he complained. Nick's mistake was trying to change Jake's small mind. He now has the means and privilege to do things that those before him couldn't. He assures Jake that he is the bad guy and points out the building across the street, which is now his new youth center. He's very rich, and according to the zoning center, since the center is more than 50 feet from Jake's cafe, he has no say in the matter. Jake wanted to keep the neighborhood safe, to which Nick assures him that he's partnered with the Horseshoe Bay PD. Jake presses him the youth center town over wasn't a big deal. Nick points out that letting kids thrive in their community and letting them know they are wanted is a big deal. He plans to open a rival cafe in his building, wishes Jake luck, and leaves. Back at Lucy's house, Gil questions Everett about the road back and what he plans to do about Celia's murder. Everett doesn't plan to do anything as he doesn't have leverage. Nancy emotionally comes in and hugs Gil to say sorry for dragging him into this. Timur calls to Ryan answers, which Gil duct tapes Everett's mouth. Timur found a broken taillight that he thinks belongs to Nancy. He asks if he's seen Nancy, but Ryan lies that he hasn't. Timur knows he's lying and asks to talk with Nancy and asks how she's gotten so close to Ryan. She likes their breaking up, but Timur then asks to talk with Everett, so she hangs up. Nancy reverts to Plan C, killing Everett for his crimes. She tells Ryan to imagine his life with Everett and how no one else has to get hurt or killed. Ryan has to talk with her in private. Gil asks if the deal still stands as he has leverage now. Ryan has the argument next room while Gil frees Everett. Hannah identifies what's happening to Nancy as parasitic entities, entity that feeds off her life force. Nancy only has a few days left to live. Cross refuses to accept that and wants to know how to remove the parasite. And it points out there is evidence that all the parasites past souls have died and knows no way to extract it, but George also refuses to believe that it's hopeless. They need to identify the parasite using a camera that captures the exact visual wavelength needed to reveal its true being, though none exists yet. George calls Nick to tell him what's going on and to use the ghost goggles to make a special camera to identify the parasite. Elsewhere, Everett goes home to get the black crown tape when Nancy, Tamora, and Ryan enter to cut him off. Flashback to Ryan remembering telling Nancy they tied him up for the wrong murder. She's planning to tie him up for the right murder. Shot to kill, she told him to let Everett go, knowing he would lead them directly to the tape. In the present, Everett asks Tamora if he knows what Nancy and Ryan did to him. Ryan and Nancy feign as though they've been alone all day. Tamora wants to see the tape. They put in the VCR to see October 8th, 1981. World wildlife footage used to record activity plays. Josiah Hudson is on the tape, and the black crown is a type of bird. Everett enters the frame while Bedrooms remembers that the tape constantly resurfacing rings true. Everett warns Ryan that if he goes down, Ryan will too. Ryan knows that October 1981 is when Josiah went missing in the woods. On the tape, the two brothers brutally fight and Everett chokes Josiah to death. Ryan is horrified by the revelation and confronts Everett for telling him that Josiah died drunk in the woods of exposure. Nancy restrains to Ryan to calm him. Everett requests his attorney. At the PD station, Ryan can't believe that people thought Josiah died of alcoholism for 40 years. He thinks Everett killed his brother out of greed. Everett is taken into the station in handcuffs. Everett turns to the press as Tamora tells him they have no comment. Nancy asks Ryan what Everett whispered before he was taken away. Ryan relays a welcome to the family message from Everett. She's done hiding from him. She asks if Ryan is okay, as this is a lot to process. His trick is not processing, but he has to give a statement, though he plans to keep it short. He tells her to go home and get some sleep. She asks if he wants to get lunch tomorrow and not process together. He happily agrees and goes inside. Nancy returns to her car where Carson is waiting and hugs her. She left proving Everett is a murderer would feel different, but she doesn't feel anything about it. She isn't who she is anymore, and after what she did today, all she keeps thinking is what her mom would think. She wonders what's wrong with her. Carson says he plans to fix it after showing her something. He takes her to the cloud where shutters flashes go off as Drew Crew captures numerous photographs and angles of the parasite. They had to catch Nancy by surprise or wouldn't have allowed them to take her photo. She recognizes it's the wraith she went after in Gorham Woods. George thinks has to ride out of the burning bus with her. Carson points out that she hasn't felt like herself because the wraith has been attacking her sense of self. Flashback to early moments of the season, but now the wraith is shown in these scenes too. Nancy threw away the Columbia catalog when actually the wraith knocked it off the desk into the trash. Ruby tied with George and Wraith gripping her arm tightly. He covers her eyes when she sees Gil being mean. Covering her mouth with a veil tells her not to give colleges a reason to judge her. Wraith wraps his claws around her throat to keep her from answering when he's asked if she believed Celia in the deal to save his life. Wraith constantly touched her outside the police station. Wrapped herself around her completely, she broke down in tears in the bedroom the night of her birthday. In the present, Nancy realizes it's been with her since the Gorham Woods, feeding off the moments she's most vulnerable, hurting her and changing her. She realizes parasites kill their host and asks how long she has left. Oh boy. So anyway, let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. Excuse me. Nancy is revealed to be the host of a parasitic entity that feeds off her life force. In this case, the Gorham Wraith attached itself to her when she fell out of the bus in the woods. Has been feeding off her vulnerable moments ever since, by changing her and hurting her. The black crown tape is found and young Everett is seen murdering Josiah in the woods. He is arrested for this murder. This episode was live tweeted by Erica Harrison via the Nancy Drew Writer's Twitter account. The Wraith is not CGI, but rather special effects makeup with a performance by Janaea Ross, who previously played the Glaika. Kenny McMahon spoke on the Wraith reveal, saying, quote, "And we filmed all those moments along the way, planned all along. All those moments notated as a Wraith moment in the scripts," end quote. She also tweeted about the reveal, saying, quote, "It's thrilling, vicious, and heartbreaking. Nancy's highest high and lowest low. It's exactly why the Drew Group writers always be 10 steps ahead of you. Hashtag Nancy Drew," end quote. So I think this episode is pretty good, and Yeah, now I just hope they can find a way to get rid of that parasite. So, yeah. So, overall, I give The Judgment of the Perilous Captive 5 Deerstalkers out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in a bit as we check the final episode of the season, The Echo of Lost Tears. So, until then, remember everyone, the game's afoot.